China is cracking down on iPhones. Did China just pressure a Broadway star to drop his lead role in a Tiananmen Square Massacre musical? And the Great Wall of China might not be so great anymore. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. This episode is sponsored by Incogni. Now, you probably know that companies are collecting your personal data, but you may not realize just how many. Dozens, maybe hundreds, most of which you've never heard of, and you have no idea what they're doing with it. Incogni helps stop them. I'll explain more at the end. So they say the shortest distance between 2 points is a line. And if you're trying to get somewhere fast, well, don't let the Great Wall of China get in your way. 2 people were arrested in Shanxi province for plowing through China's Great Wall, leaving an excavator-sized hole. State media says there was already a gap in the wall, but the pair made the hole bigger with an excavator. The wall, which dates back to the Ming Dynasty, was reportedly damaged beyond repair, and the 2 were charged with destroying a cultural relic. But of course, the Great Wall isn't just a priceless cultural relic. It's China's best defense against the Mongolian horde. I imagine they'll be conquered any day now. Speaking of national security, China's central government is cracking down on iPhones. State employees told the Wall Street Journal that iPhones are being banned for government officials at work. According to them, Beijing has for years restricted government officials at some agencies from using iPhones for work, but the order has now been widened. The latest order also signals an intensified effort by Beijing to ensure its rules are strictly enforced. Now, is this about security, or is this about taking market share away from one of the biggest smartphone sellers in China? Apple gets about 19% of its revenue from the China market. Losing any access to that market would be a big financial blow. Just on the news of this ban, Apple's stocks fell 3.6% on Wednesday. And I'm sure in a total coincidence, Huawei rolled out its rival smartphone last week. According to tech analysis from Tech Insights, the Huawei P60 Pro shows a breakthrough in China's microchip technology. It said Huawei Technologies and China's top chip maker, SMIC, have built an advanced 7-nanometer processor, and that the P60 Pro was the first to use it. According to Bloomberg, this shows that China is just 5 years behind the most cutting-edge chip technology. The U.S. government now says it's investigating to see if anyone broke U.S. export rules or if China might have somehow stolen the technology. In 2019, the U.S. banned companies from selling software and equipment to Huawei. It also restricted international chip makers using U.S.-made technology from partnering with Huawei over fears the technology would be used by China's military.
I'm going to withhold comment on the particular chip in question until we get more information about precisely its character and composition. And from my perspective, though, what it tells us, regardless, is that the United States should continue on its course of a small yard, high fence set of technology restrictions focused narrowly on national security concerns, not on the broader question of commercial decoupling.
Several Huawei staff told Reuters the phone's launch had taken them by surprise because its official release was scheduled for next week. Reuters also reported that Huawei didn't give any advance notice or do any advertising, which is unusual for a big release like this. Instead, the phone was released last week, just as U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo was visiting Beijing. Her agency is the one that imposes many of the United States' key export controls on China, which is why Chinese netizens speculated the timing wasn't a coincidence. Feeding the narrative, the Global Times said the phone was proof that China's homegrown semiconductor industry is advancing despite the U.S. ban. According to the New York Times, more than a dozen vendors cropped up on Chinese e-commerce sites to sell phone cases for the new model with Miss Raimondo's face imprinted on the back. And after the break, China strikes another blow against Taiwan. Welcome back. China has been kicked out of the Central American Parliament, where it's been a permanent observer since 1999. And surprise, surprise, guess who got Taiwan's spot? You guessed it, China. Taiwan got booted out after it said the Nicaraguan parliamentary group forced through a proposal to replace Taiwan with China. The reason given for the proposal was that Taiwan was a province of mainland China, which disqualifies it from participating as an independent country. Wow, they just are really twisting that knife. Instead of being kicked out, though, Taiwan said it would leave the parliament to uphold its national dignity. To which the parliament responded, "You mean provincial dignity, right?" Unfortunately, this shouldn't come as a surprise. Of the 6 countries in the parliament, only Guatemala still recognizes Taiwan as a country. Speaking of Latin America, China is building a deep water port in Peru as part of its Belt and Road Initiative. A representative for Chinese state-owned shipping company COSCO called it the gateway from South America to Asia. Supposedly, it would cut 10 days of travel time from South America to China. But there might be another reason China is building the port. They want to use it as a military base. That's something the U.S. is afraid of. It's getting a little close for comfort, but not as close to that Chinese spy base in Cuba. Mainland China was the biggest overseas market for Japanese seafood, or at least it was, until China banned it. China claims this is because Japan started releasing treated water from the Fukushima nuclear power plant into the ocean last month. The International Atomic Energy Agency has said the water is safe, but China is claiming it's not. Japan is now fighting back. Japan told the World Trade Organization China's ban is totally unacceptable. And they aren't stopping there. Japanese leaders say they may file a formal complaint with the WTO if things aren't resolved. That'll really show the CCP. Meanwhile, Japan has announced emergency relief funds for its seafood industry. While the ban is painful for Japan's seafood industry in the short term, this could actually be a good thing long term. Japan's government says it's going to find new markets outside China for its seafood, and being less dependent on China is always a good thing. And after the break, did China pressure a Broadway star into dropping a lead role? Welcome back. Did China just pressure a Broadway actor into dropping a lead role? Zachary Noah Pizer announced he was stepping away from his lead role in the Broadway musical Tiananmen, which was set to debut in Arizona in October. He posted this short one-line announcement on his Instagram without giving any explanation and disabled the comments so no one could ask. His manager told CNN that he pulled out because of a creative difference. However, I think it's pretty clear why Pizer did this. The play is about the June 4th Tiananmen Square Massacre. China's military gunned down thousands of peaceful student protesters in the 1989 massacre, and to this day it's still trying to cover it up. And Pizer was on a concert tour in China when he made the announcement. So I think the only question really is, did China use money, coercion, or both? And speaking of coercion, Vanuatu's former prime minister is accusing China of meddling in his country's politics. He was ousted in a vote of no confidence just 10 months after he took office. According to the text of the motion, the reason was because he had steered the country too close to the West. Vanuatu values political independence, and in theory, the government isn't supposed to pick sides in the U.S.-China rivalry. But the former prime minister says the current prime minister, Sado Kilman, has definitely picked sides and that he's chosen China. Kilman is now calling into question a security agreement between Vanuatu and Australia. Members of his party said the security pact with Australia compromised Vanuatu's neutral status and could jeopardize development assistance from China, its biggest external creditor. When he was prime minister in 2015, Sado Kilman reportedly told Xi Jinping he wanted to cooperate more with China on national development. Xi Jinping promised to give Vanuatu economic and technology aid with no political strings attached, which is code for, we'll get you addicted first, and then we'll start pulling the strings. Vanuatu is not the only one removing officials. Only a few months on the job, the head of China's top military court was mysteriously removed after just 8 months in office. The Standing Committee of the National People's Congress voted to remove him along with a list of other personnel changes. It didn't give any reasons. We'll have a deep dive on that in a future episode. But speaking of no good reason, China's Luckin coffee chain is now selling an alcoholic latte.
The collaboration has set social media ablaze and triggered a rush apparently in stores. Now, for those looking for a major buzz in the early hours, well, you may be a little disappointed. The company says the alcohol content of the latte is below 0.5%. But what if you drink 3 or 4 like me? What a way to start the day.
The coffee is infused with a Chinese hard alcohol called baijiu, which if you've never had is somewhere in the flavor profile of unleaded gasoline. Apparently getting caffeine and booze all in one is popular because Luckin says it's selling over 5 million a day. And they would never lie. And this episode is sponsored by Incogni. Whenever you do anything online or use apps on your phone, there's a huge number of companies that collect your personal data. When I signed up for Incogni, I discovered there were dozens of data brokers that potentially had my private information without my permission. And these companies can get hacked, spreading my private information even more widely. For example, a couple of months ago, thousands of Norton LifeLock customers got hacked, which is ironic since the whole point of LifeLock is identity theft protection. But this just goes to show even the biggest companies get hacked. So what can you do? Get as many companies as possible to delete your data off the internet, and that's what Incogni does for you. Incogni has already gotten my details removed from 99 of these data brokers, with a lot more in progress. And I don't have to do anything after signing up. Incogni just handles it. So I recommend you get Incogni for yourself. Click the link below or go to incogni.com/uncensored. The first 100 people to use the code uncensored will get 60% off. Get your personal data off the market with Incogni. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching China Uncensored.